Hello, welcome. Happy New Year. You're listening to Poured Over, the Barnes& Noble podcast. My name is Chris Gillespie. My guest today is the author of the New York Times bestselling novel, My Absolute Darling, which was a finalist for the John Leonard Prize for Best First Book and the LA Times Book Prize. He's got a new novel out this January entitled Crux. Gabriel Tallent, thanks so much for being here.
Delighted to be here.
Your new book, Crux, which is out now, it's been generating quite a bit of hype. I have a copy of it right here, of course. I've been reading it. I really enjoy it. Stephen King is quoted as saying that it's one of the best novels about friendship he's ever read, which is certainly very high praise, and I agree with it, having read the book. The two friends in question are two teenagers named Dan and Tama, who live in a small town out in the Mojave Desert, and they're in their senior year of high school. Would you mind telling us a little bit about who Dan and Tama are as individuals and also what makes their friendship so special?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's see. So Dan is kind of like a little bit of an American golden boy. He's tall, handsome, he's good at school. He excels at things. He's under tremendous pressure by his parents to attend university, which he can do because he's sort of promising and gifted and adored by his teachers. And Tama, his best friend with whom he's grown up all his life, like they were bathed in the same sink as kids, and they have a sort of like a best friend, almost sibling relationship. She's Tama is gay, and it's not romantic. It's just a
Hmm.
platonic friendship porn. And Tama is sort of uh, a little bit of a burnout, a little outrageous, ravaged with social anxiety. She has a tendency to just out with very inappropriate things. She's hated by everyone at school because she won't stop talking about her period. She's sort of like a reckless, um, slightly oddball, manic character. And they sort of rely upon each other because Dan is suffering through sort of the onset of major depression and really leans on Tama for her brightness and warmth. And Tama herself can be like a little bit volatile and struggles and leans on Dan for sort of his support and steadiness. And this way they sort of help each other through. Is that what you're wondering?
That is what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Yes, I think
Okay.
that's a good summary of their dynamic and who they are. Both of them have such distinct voices and ways of thinking, and it was clear to me that as the writer of their story, you have a very strong grasp on both of them, who they are, how they talk, even if they are pretty different. I was wondering if you relate to one of them more than the other, or do you feel like they represent two different but equal sides of your own personality, either as it is now or when you were their age?
Dang, man. I do I relate to one more than the other? Like I think the question is hard to answer because
Hmm.
when I'm trying to write a character, I'm always trying to like make them emphatically themselves. Like I'm trying to chase something different, right? So I'm not really trying to write myself into a character. I'm trying to really pursue something. It, so like I don't know. Like all characters are slightly parts of yourself. I think that is like kind of true. Like you're coming up with the
Hmm.
dialogue. It's somewhere. Ah man, I guess if I'd had to say, I'm like I got a little bit more Tama in me. That's weird to say because people get messed up about the gender stuff. Like I think for like readers, oftentimes the gender of a character is something that looms the largest in terms of who they are and how they think of them and how they categorize them.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm like I have I struggled in school. I'm ravaged with learning disabilities. I had like bad acne. When I toured My Absolute Darling, I was covered in acne. Like I think I have like a little bit of streak of the same recklessness. I guess I identify a little bit more with Tama.
Hmm.
But
Are there
it's a tough question.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw a
Oh,
curveball at
that's
you right
okay.
away.
The grilling begins.
Yes, yeah, we're just diving right into it. We're kind of tackling a very steep climb, I guess. We
Sure,
should have
yeah.
done some warming up. But I was also wondering if there were any friendships or other kinds of interpersonal relationships that sort of you have in your own life that kind of inspired or informed the dynamic between Dan and Tama.
Yes, of course, yes. I feel like it's misleading. Like I'm not writing any particular friendship that I have. I don't
Right.
have a friendship just like this.
Hmm.
Like I think something that trips people up is that I'm writing fiction, which is sometimes surprising. Um, and like a lot of times, what I'm trying to do with a book is I have some experience, I have some knowledge, I have something that I want to try and communicate, and I'm trying
Hmm.
to dress it up in entirely fictional circumstances in order to convey something that I have seen in my own life. Like, does that make sense? So everything about the book is trying to be a lie. So I'm trying not to write any friendship that I have, right? Like I'm trying to run
Okay.
away from it. But like it being informed by the experience of having profound, meaningful friendships that mean a lot to me, for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I have that, and I have that like it's different, but to a certain extent, I have that with my wife, right? Like I have someone like whose esteem means everything to me and who like goes through a lot with me, right? So yeah, I do have these relationships. I'm trying to write about the importance of those relationships. My absolute darling was a little bit a novel about not taking the existence of other people seriously. Like not like which like that was a novel about misogyny,
Hmm.
which is in part like a failure to take seriously the existence of like an entire category of people, but like other people personally in your life. And so I think I really wanted to write a novel about friendship, which is a relationship that in many ways takes most seriously the existence and importance of other people in our lives.
The friendship between them is at the core of the story, right? You may even say that it's the crux of the story is the dynamic that's between them. And I think what's so um, masterful about it is that it is, I think people who read the book, when they read the book, will recognize friendships in their own lives, whether it's friendships that they have currently or it's friendships that they had when they were kids or teenagers. Because I think that was my experience reading the book was, oh, I did not grow up in the desert. I am not a rock climber, but I can very much relate to what these two kids are going through as seniors in high school, but then also as friends, and especially things can get. Um, I understand from having firsthand experience with it when you are perhaps sharing an interest with someone that you're close with. If you have a hobby or a creative pursuit that you do it together, and you want to be able to are you going to pursue it together? But then that's sort of a big question for both people involved. Especially when you're at that age and you're trying to decide maybe what your future looks like or the first steps of your future. So I think it's very well rendered, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and a lot of people are going to relate to it.
Oh man, what was your hobby?
It was not rock climbing, but I think what I was thinking about in high school was a lot of like we'd make short films or little videos or things like that. This would have been I was in high school from like 2007 to 2011. I graduated, so it was sort of right around when like people had digital cameras and you could upload
Yeah.
videos and edit videos.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought it was interesting that you actually set the book in that same time period. Like they graduate high school the year after that I did, and I was
Yeah.
wondering how you chose that particular year or that time period.
Yeah, look, I'm not like chronology is not my strong suit as a writer, and I make a lot of these decisions recklessly and emotionally. There's there's a couple points, which is that shortly after the time period of the event, a number of like 514 strong climbers emerged from the region, and I felt like if I set the book after that moment, then you would sort of have to erase the existence of like some of those climbers, or you'd have to reference it. And so I wanted to set the book before that happened, out of
Hmm.
respect for those climbers and their accomplishments. Does that make sense? And then also, like it's an artifact. It's an artifact of the way I originally wrote the book, which followed Dan and Tama much further forward in their careers, and then later events in their career were sort of tied to particular moments. So that just was always the historical setting of their high school experience, and I didn't move it up for those reasons. I also wanted to keep it like a little closer to when I was in high school, just so I wasn't going too far afield.
Hmm. And it's sort of this sweet spot in terms of, I mean, I guess it's easy for me to say as someone who might be looking back at that time period with teenage nostalgia or things like that, but there's this kind of period in time where technology or smartphones are just coming around. They're maybe not as
Yeah.
ubiquitous as they are now, but everyone, I think for the most part in my high school would have had cell phones. They might have been those kind of like the ones with like the flip keyboards or whatever, where we have the full keyboard there. So you could
Fantastic.
text and do those
Excellent.
things, but it wasn't, and you had
Yeah.
social media, but it wasn't as pervasive as I think
Hadn't
it.
eaten your life. You hadn't eaten your entire life yet.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like there, but it's almost in a way that almost feels more palatable or comfortable because the characters in the story do text or instant message a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
not, it feels like it's done in an authentic way where their whole lives are not done over that, but they do use it to communicate.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine who's from the region about that sort of time period, and I was asking like, and it was a moment. It was for me, and this is what she reported too, where like some people have phones and some people don't.
Hmm.
You know.
And it's not an issue that someone doesn't necessarily have a phone because
Yeah.
it's you can still find them or maybe it's not a problem. But I was curious about when you were writing about that moment in time, was there any kind of impulse to include any kind of references to what the popular music would have been or TV shows or slang or any of that? Because I think for I don't necessarily want to call it like a period piece because it's only from 20 years ago, but I could see a version of this novel that has a lot more kind of cultural touchstones, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I just like I don't. I don't excel at that sort of it's just not like a strong suit that I have. Like
Hmm.
I don't know, like my memory isn't organized like that very well, and I like don't have a very good memory just to like go with. So I have friends, right, who could just tell you what were the songs on the radio at like any given moment. And
Hmm.
that's just like not me, and so I don't tend to like do a lot of that. And then the book is still long, but like you know, there's sort of like a merciless process of cutting that tries to go on, where you
Hmm.
just sort of like cut everything that isn't really trying to hit your themes. Does that make sense? And I don't know. I personally, I don't end up with a lot of those references because it's not really what the book is about. It's not trying to be a historical fiction novel about that moment. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I don't think you need those things in the book.
Yeah.
I think it certainly works without it. And I almost appreciated that you didn't have those things because it did allow me to, as the reader, sort of exist in both the present moment of like where we are today, right now, but then also thinking about that time. Like it almost, I think by not including those sort of references or touchstones, you kind of make the story more evergreen in a
Yeah.
way that doesn't date it. So I didn't think you needed any of that. And I think it works well without it. Um, I am very interested to hear about your relationship with rock climbing, because I'm assuming this must be something that you yourself must be interested in, or is that something that you totally just fictionalized and fabricated and researched just for the
Oh,
purposes of
how
this
cool would
book?
that be? Like, no, I don't. I've just watched a bunch of YouTube videos about it. No, I mean, I am not. I'm not a strong climber, but when I moved, so I moved here to Utah in like winter of 2011, like going in like October 2011, something like that.
Hmm.
And bought my then girlfriend, now wife, and I just went right out to IME, which is our local climbing shop, and bought a rack of gear and started climbing. And I was like, if I'm going to be here in Utah, then we're gonna, let's climb. And so it started being something that we did fairly seriously and badly and dangerously starting then. And I was working at the ski resorts, which put me in contact with a lot of much better climbers and sort of
Mm.
absorbed, like learned some, got some advice that way, and so have climbed seriously, as in I spend a lot of time doing it, but not seriously as in doing it well for for a long time. We were like, pre-pandemic, like going down to Indian Creek once a week. So a fairly big time commitment. Bad feel,
I'm
right?
assuming is I'm from the East Coast, from New England, so I don't think, and maybe, I mean, we have mountains here, but I'm assuming that maybe climbing culture is a little bit different out west just because of the geography and the landscape of the mountains and also the conditions where it's probably drier and more conducive to being able to do things year round, not in the summertime because it might be too hot. But how did you first? Because climbing is something that's so foreign to me that I don't even know where I would even start to learn about this or hear about this. But how did you first get interested in it before you
Well, the East
moved to
Coast is
Utah?
crawling with strong climbers, so you could swing it. You find someone. How do you start learning? Is that what you're asking?
Well, how did you get interested? Because I could see, even if you're surrounded by this or you witness this kind of thing, it may not be something that interests you or excites you, but how did you first kind of, what is appealing about it to you?
What is appealing about it? Man, I mean, it's what is not appeal. Everything about it is appeal. It's majestic. Like, I grew up in Mendocino where there's no climbing,
Hmm.
and uh, like the high school had like a 11-foot tall little climbing wall, and I used to just go in, or like I was not a climber at the time, right? Like not climbing enough to get strong, but I would go in early to school and set boulder problems for myself and work them. And then we did an outdoor leadership class and watched a documentary on Lynn Hill, and it blew my mind, and I was like, I want to do this so badly, and there's no climbing around here. And then somebody was like, "Oh, there's like a bridge where like 20 years ago, like some climbers were in town and they glued up climbing holds to the piers of the bridge, And
Wow.
so you'd like go out to like this, skanky little gulch, where everything is just covered in moss, and I don't know, like maybe someone had just been through and replaced the glue and everything was really dialed, but it looked pretty old and run down and was kind of a sketchy situation. And so you'd like try some of the climbing. There were just like beach stones that someone had epoxied to the concrete pier that supports the bridge,
Hmm.
Pershing Creek Bridge or something. I forget the name of the creek. Um, and so, wanted to do it, couldn't do it, like couldn't really do it. And then through college, I just like kids were going climbing, but I was incredibly studious, but also like really bad at being a student. So like in order to succeed at school, it took me like a lot of time. So I was just in the library all the time. But like I don't know, I got kind of burned out, and everyone thought I should go to graduate school because I liked the cultural history of the 18th century and was like really passionate about it. And so I was encouraged to pursue that. But I was like, I don't, I just like had been a part of me that was just like in the woods all the time that I missed because I was now in the library just like 80 hours a week. And I thought, I'm gonna take a little break and do that. So it was at a time of my life where I was trying to be outdoors more, trying to do things. And when you come here to Utah, there are the rocks. And I was like, we can learn this. We can figure this out. I'd sort of always wanted to do it, and then I was here. Is that an answer to your question? I don't know if that was
Absolutely.
interesting at all.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like I said, I truly don't know anything about climbing, and so I was interested to learn about it in the book. I was interested to learn about the culture surrounding it. All of the terminology was all
Oh, I'm
really
like so leery
fascinating.
of that. The culture is incredibly diverse, right? Because you have the gunks out there, so you have all kinds of like New York climbers, like it's all over the United States, right?
Hmm.
And like a lot of climbing groups are just like they're different, man, you know? And they sort of have their own personalities and dominant figures in in the sport. So I'm like so worried about like any idea that I'm like speaking for climbing culture because it's so niche. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
You know, like if you wrote a book about a Barnes and Noble store, like you'd be leery of being like, this is book selling culture. Like these are just four jackasses who are like doing their best and having a good time, and this is one way to do it, but this is not like how it always looks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see it how it would be sort of like a regional thing or just different flavors of the climbing community. And I mean, I think in the book you probably are talking about the maybe more West Coast desert kind
Yeah.
of side of it, maybe. Is that
Yeah.
fair to say?
Yeah, it's highly influenced by like we go to Joshua Tree every year,
Hmm.
and so it's influenced by our set of like granite trad climbing friends who are like you know, kind of a like a risky antisocial personality. And so it's colored by that, but you could have gym climbing friends who were of a totally different bent and mindset. So yeah, it's highly influenced by the sort of this subculture that I'm in and the personalities I know.
It seems to me reading the book that climbing thematically really makes sense as a metaphor for life, in terms of a lot of the thought process that the characters are going through or the things that they contend with while climbing. Was that something that you
But
were
like
maybe?
everything is like everything you get passionate about like becomes it's totally true. Like you become a new climber and you totally do that and you start reading your entire life through sort of the the metaphor of climbing. But
Hmm.
I think like I think a lot of things I think a lot of things can be that way. Climbing is actually a little I think ooh, I think a little hard to make interesting as a story, um, because it's so technical and the stakes are not always clear. So it's a little hard to describe. And when you're describing it to people, a lot of times they just think you're like a reckless idiot, right? Like so if you roll up on someone on the street and you just try and tell them your climbing story, a lot of times it's boring and making it interesting and giving it subject like substance is the problem. You are looking at me with bafflement.
I swear this is just my listening face. I'm following you completely. The um I think sort of what you're getting at is that because climbing fundamentally is just sort of you're scaling a wall or some surface, and that usually means that you're moving your hands to grab onto different things, and that's sort of the
Yeah, it's hard
basic
to
motion.
describe why it is like the sequence of events to
Yeah.
somebody. And also, like I think to strangers, a lot of times it sort of sounds like, oh man, I put myself in this risky situation and almost died. And they're like, Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so like giving it like like giving it, like making it meaningful
Hmm.
to the person you're telling the story to becomes this problem because climbing itself, like as an emotional experience, is a deeply intense and sort of like full of wonder and danger and self-discovery. But but those experiences are not legible to the person who you're talking to when you're just trying to describe some tiny edge that you're holding on to. So, yes, I think I worked really hard to make climbing a metaphor for life in that book, but I think you can do that with like a lot of things. And I think climbing, I don't want to like overstate it because climbing I think is a lot of times obscure and illegible and a really strange, reckless thing that we don't have to do that we engage in anyway, which can be a little
Hmm.
hard to explain to people.
Because it's sort of it's obviously a physical challenge, but it's also absolutely a mental challenge and sounds like an emotional challenge. But for all those reasons, it ends up being kind of a really gratifying experience, or a really meaningful experience, it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, and because you have to meet the objection, that people have, like, why would you ever risk something? Like, why would you ever risk getting hurt or risk your life or something? Like, the risk seems irresponsible and unconscionable and hard to understand.
Has your relationship with that changed at all since you've become a father?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question because I've always been like a cautious climber, and you
Hmm.
sort of like can climb cautiously. Dan and Tama, the characters in the novel, are climbing really dangerously, but it is because of lack of opportunity, right? Like they're trying to pursue their passion and they don't yet have the resources to make it safe. Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah, in the book they have opportunities, or they talk about different gear that they could acquire, or gear that's really expensive, or gear that they do
Yeah,
acquire, all things that would make it a way safer activity for them.
yes, you can buy gear and like if you want to do the kind of climbing that Dan and Tama do, you can buy enough equipment to do it pretty safely.
Hmm.
I mean, there's always inherent risk, but there's going to be inherent risk in any sport. So you can do it safely. Dan and Tama are not doing it safely because they are down and out and they don't have the money to buy the gear that would make it safe. And they don't have the support of their families, right? There's another character in the story, Paisley Cuthers, who has the sort of full support of her parents. And so when she's going to go out climbing, her parents are going to help her every way, take every step to do it safely. So Paisley Cuthers is in some sense embarked upon a totally different sport than Dan and Tama. But so that's more like some like different because I don't necessarily I've found myself in dangerous situations climbing, but I don't necessarily climb very dangerously very often. But you know, I tried to become a writer after college at a time when everyone else was going into safer careers, and I was terrified. I didn't have a lot of money, and it like wasn't clear what the fallback position was if it turned out I sucked. And so you do take risks in your life to pursue something that you are passionate about, and sometimes you just sort of bite the bullet that the risks are part of it because you can't make it any safer. Does that make sense?
And a lot of times the risk, of something is almost what ends up giving it its meaning, sort of without the risk, then I mean, I guess some form of, no risk, no reward, but a lot of times that risk or potential sacrifice ends up being what gives something its meaning. Because if you're doing something and there's no risk involved, oftentimes that may not necessarily feel the most fulfilling or stimulating, because there's just something missing that we sort of maybe need as humans to feel that sense of fulfillment.
I think that that is totally true, and that is not at all how I think about it. Like, how I think about it is, w- as a culture, we tend to
Hmm.
talk about risk as if it's something you engage in, Like you go climbing and you take on risk, as if there is an alternative, right? Like an alternative where you never go climbing and there is no risk. But that's not actually how life shakes out, right? Because like you can take a big risk on becoming a book podcaster or becoming a writer or pursuing some sort of like tenuous career. But there are risks also in not doing it, right? Like when you're
Mhm.
young and you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, if you just play everything safely, you can end up with less than you wanted in your life. Like you're giving up things by being safe too. There's just different risks, different paths of risk. So like Dan and Tama don't have to go climbing. And by going climbing, they're engaging in risks. But if they never go climbing, if they never see what else is out there in the world than the lives they've been given, that too is a risky proposition. We tend to think about risk as if it's something you do, right? You go climbing and that's risky. Like that's how we tend to frame it. And then we talk about whether or not the risk has value. But that's not how I tend to talk about it. Like how I want to think about risk is that if you never go climbing, right? Something is lost. You're giving up something. You're giving up the possibility of something that you love because of what you're afraid of, but you're there is risk implicit in that. Like you've already given up something in order to be safe. And so like if Dan and Tama never go climbing, then all that they can do is sort of embark upon these lives that they've been given, which is maybe fine for some characters, right? But that's not what Dan and Tama want. Like Dan and Tama hate the lives that they've been given, and they
Mhm.
feel trapped and meaningless. And all that they see, like Tama has this future of just like dead end waitressing jobs that she despises. Right? That's not how she wants to end up. Like there's just this future for her of slowly becoming her mom. And Dan doesn't want to go to college. He's suffering through the onset of major mental illness, and it's not clear that he's going to survive sort of the rigors and monotony of sort of a life at school, right? Because he's sort of keeping himself alive with adventure. And so if they never go climbing, then they embark upon lives that are risky in another way, of this sort of encroaching lack of opportunity, lack of choice, lack of passion. Does that make sense? And so it's
Yes,
not that there's, yeah, go ahead.
it's that it's not that risk is optional, it's that risk is in some form inescapable. It just is different types of risk, kind of that, or the way that we think about risk. Or they're almost like more popular or well-known types of risks than all of the types of risk that are out there.
Yeah, you can have both choices can be perilous. And if you consistently make the safe choice in your life, you can just end up with less for yourself than you wanted. Like
Hmm.
sometimes, especially when you're young, the risks of attempting big things pay off. Because if you fail, you have time to pick yourself back up, right?
Hmm. And then there's also talking about the characters' moms, that Tama's doesn't want to turn into her life that's similar to her mom's. Dan's mom actually is kind of an interesting character because she's written in her 20s, or when she was young, she wrote some kind of really acclaimed best-selling novel that sort
Yeah.
of launched her into the literary stratosphere.
Yeah.
Um, and then following that, she struggles immensely to, I don't remember if she writes a second book or
She
if
writes a
the
second
second,
book and kind of like fizzles after that.
right. And then the third book is the one where she really doesn't even want to try. She's having
Yeah.
total creative paralysis,
Yeah.
is feeling very jaded,
Yeah.
not a lot of money. She
Running out of, yeah.
is burnt out. Yeah. So Dan as a character has also seen this and is absorbing this and grew up in this household with someone who it's almost kind of like making a wish on like a cursed monkey paw or something, or like, ooh, how many 20-year-old writers out there would love to write their first book that becomes a best-selling huge smash novel, but then there's repercussions of that you maybe don't necessarily think about when you're that young or at that stage in your career, um, were her feelings of writer's block things that you were kind of dealing with as you were writing this as your second book?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yeah. That's sort of a figure, that's sort of figure of terror. Well, I'm trying to do a lot of things with that character. But like, yeah, that is the emotional heart of it. I wrote a book my editor didn't buy,
Mm,
and really struggled to make this book work. And and I was sort of like facing down the fear that I like didn't have it, didn't have a second book in me, wasn't the real thing. So yeah, that is a little bit about me. In the way of fiction, there's other things that you're trying to do there. So I think we have this American narrative where it's like just chase your dream and everything will be all right.
hmm
Chase the dream and you'll get it. And I think it's more complicated than that. And so the figure of Alexandra is there to complicate that interpretation of this novel, right? Because there's a way you read this novel, you're like, you should just do whatever you love, like just follow
hmm
your bliss. That's sort of the moral of the story. And this figure of a person who did that and ended up unhappy, um, and crushingly depressed is 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 a guardrail against that wrong interpretation of the text. Does that make sense?
hmm
And there's like another thing there, which is that many climbing narratives are sort of about these cowboy figures who sort of abandon everyone close to them and strike off into the wilderness, leaving behind responsibility in order to seek self-discovery. And I think that that is a great story. That's an interesting story. It's an American story. It's not what I wanted to do. And so that figure is there to kind of represent that, to be playing into this Western theme, right? This person who just wants to leave everything behind. But that's not my main characters, and that's not what this book is about, right? Like these characters are in some ways the people who get left behind.
Right. It is sort of a American novel of the whether to pursue, like go out and like you're saying, like go pursue your dreams and work hard and you can make it happen, but there is almost a um level of ignorance or maybe arrogance that comes along with that because like you said, like there are other things that come along with that or other risks involved or other things that you have to pay because I don't necessarily think this is giving anything away, but in the process of becoming a successful author, at least for a short period of time, Dan's mother ends up losing her friendship with Tama's mother as almost a direct result of her literary success, which I don't necessarily think she
She gives up
saw
on that friendship, right? She
before,
gives up.
right?
She
Yeah.
gives up on that friendship. She gives up on the sort of most meaningful friendship in her life to defend a certain vision of herself as a writer rather than as a friend.
hmm
Yeah. And I think that that is a huge thing. That is a colossal thing to give up for your career.
Reading the book, I was also thinking about how it is just, it's sort of wild that as a society and as a culture, we throw 16 and 17-year-olds into these situations where, you're like, hey, you're only a teenager. You probably have only lived in one part of the country. You probably you've had a limited amount of experiences, but by the way, you have to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
also that might involve you um, either spending a unimaginable amount of money or going into a staggering amount of debt in order to do that. And by the way, you have to decide right now what's it going to be, which seems like a really unfair predicament to put a lot of young people in.
Yeah, at that particular moment, we did pressure a lot of promising young people to go to college with sort of the idea that it would solve all of their financial problems.
Mhm.
That's not how the narrative has panned out necessarily.
Right. It's almost like you can't higher education as a way to economic stability is kind of the it's kind of a joke, right? Like we all know that if you're going to go to college, it's going to be very expensive. You might take on a lot of debt. It's going to maybe not position you in the best way, but it's almost sort of unavoidable if you're for a lot of people, for most people who are seeking to go to college or go to a university somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
A lot of my peers have been through that.
yeah. Do you think having written this book and sort of gone back into this headspace a little bit, has it made you realize anything about yourself when you were a teenager, or has it made you think about things that you wish you could have done differently or you would do differently now with um the wisdom of hindsight?
I did I don't know that I thought a lot about myself doing this. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like a lot of what I'm trying to do is like go over and over the book to make sure that sort of the logic of it all holds up. And I don't know that I'm like doing a lot of like reflecting upon myself in that moment. I I do think that thinking about it, like thinking about that time of life, I'm just like astonished at how like low functioning I was, like how bad at everything I was, how new everything was, how little you know how to do. And
Hmm.
so I think if there's sort of any retrospective I have, it's like just a little more self-compassion because like even when you're 18, you're like the world is so new and you're doing so many new things and you're like you're just so bad at it all. Like you just have no idea what adulthood is coming for you. You know what I mean?
Hmm. A lot of idealism, a lot of self-righteousness, probably a lot of angst at
There's just so
the
much
way
you
things
have.
are.
Like you're bad at managing your time. You're a mess. You sleep all, like you're dysfunctional. And like here's something, but like Dan and Tama don't realize how much help is out there if they ask. Like
Hmm.
it just, in many instances, never occurs to them to ask for help because that's sort of what they've been taught, right? Like they've just been ingrained with this mentality that they're alone and have to do things on their own. So they think that in order to learn climbing, they just have to hash it out as best they can with nothing but each other. But that's not quite true, right? Like if they just went into Joshua Tree National Park and started rolling up on campsites looking for people to teach them, you'd find it. You'd find those
Hmm.
people. You get taken under somebody's wing. Somebody would show you, right? And so there's this way in which they are limited by sort of the failures of what they understand about the world. Like that's a worldview that they have that they are alone, but it like sort of only exists in their head. They're wrong about that. Do you know what I mean? And a
Right.
lot of stuff you never discover until you maybe never discover it, or you don't discover it until you get a little older. Does that make
Eh,
sense?
Yeah, and it's sort of a balancing act of kind of between because there's so much of that innocence, for lack of a better word, of maybe not knowing certain things or being aware that allows for a sense of possibility or hope or energy or certainly passion. And then the reality is that, like, as you gradually experience things, then you lose some of that innocence in exchange for experience. But I think what is something that's kind of like fundamental to a lot of people's lives or the human condition is just like, how do we hold on to that innocence to some extent? Because it is important to us and it's part of us, but um, we can't necessarily, it's a difficult thing to hold on to.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There was, as we are kind of running short on time, there was a passage that I did want to share with the listener from the book, because there were so many examples in the book as I was reading it that I would, bookmark and kind of flag the page, because I was like, that was such a terrific passage, or that really speaks to a feeling that I had as a teenager or feelings that I have now. And so I think this one passage that I thought was so well written and is kind of the ultimate life hack, whether you're looking to climb or write or really do anything. So this is after Tama completes a really difficult and important climb. I did it, she thought. She was delirious with it. She was thinking, now I know how I can do any of the big things. Now I have the recipe. It is hard work and attention to detail and one thing after another. The whole world goes this way. It seems impossible, but the moves are there. You just have to find them and you have to have a little hope. It took me 97 days, but that doesn't matter. What matters is I know how to do it now, and it's all guts and work and belief, and that's it. And if you're willing to give it everything day after day, week after week, month after month, then you can do the sorts of things no one believes a girl like you can do. You've done it before, you can do it again. And that is just like as close to one of the secrets of the universe, I feel like, as you can get. That type of commitment and determination is so important, but it's also easier said than done. Do you have any advice or insight for listeners who are looking to maybe channel this in their own lives to achieve whatever they're looking to achieve, or to climb whatever uh, figurative or literal mountains that are looking to climb?
Oh man, throwing down life hacks here. That's not how I usually think of myself.
You wrote it. This came from you.
Yeah, no, no, no. I thought, as a bit of like a sort of a set piece in someone's interiority. Yeah, I think that insight has been foundational to me because I like in a writing class, I'm sort of like one of the least gifted students in the class, right? Like I'm not, I don't think, like a profound native talent, right? And I think a lot of times that's how we tend to think about things is we want a sort of excellence and we want it to emerge early and really shine. And I feel like one of the problems that I see people, because people are, like a lot of times, I'll just like meet people and they ask what I do, and if I say I'm a writer, like one of the first things that they bring up is like, oh, that's so cool. I wanted to be a writer, or I wanted to be a photographer, or I wanted to be, and I feel like a big place people get hung up is they don't like persevere through the feeling of sucking, right?
Mhm.
Like they sort of want to do it for as long as you feel good, but as soon as you embark seriously upon a book or a major photography series, like the feeling changes and the overwhelming experiences of being so bad at it for so long. And so I do think people don't have enough like tolerance for that sort of repeated failure. And that's I think a foundational experience of climbing is that it's painful and you suck and it's scary. And it's a foundational experience of writing and I think a lot of art. And it's something that you have to go through if you want to get anywhere.
And it's really sort of its own talent and its own skill, because you might be, like you said, someone could be just innately good with words or good with language or have a good imagination or things like that. But to be able to persevere, like you're saying, is really its own skill set completely that needs to be developed and honed and recognized for what it is.
I worry it's like scary if we call it a skill. Like maybe it is a skill, right? But it's also something that you just do, right? Like,
Mhm.
I guess running is a skill as well. But you're a runner if you just get up in the morning and you run. Like
Mhm.
if you want to make a novel, you just sort of have to get up in the morning and do it.
Mhm.
And that's not a skill that you I maybe discipline is a skill, but anyone can develop that. I don't want like I'm worried that calling it a skill can make it feel out of reach or special. And I don't think it is out of reach or special.
Right. I think it's more so just because I think everyone has things that if they tap into innately, their passions or things that they just, like, for example, if you're a runner, then you're going to say, I just run. This is what I do. I feel this compulsion to go run. It's just who I am. It's part of what I do. I feel like there's that element of it that's so important, of being able to get attuned with yourself enough to know what those things are that you simply have to do, whether that's running or climbing or writing. If you can get in tune with that, that sort of can be an engine for helping you get through those difficult periods.
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of it is getting up in the morning and running even when you don't feel like it, right?
Yeah, being able to push through that and have the vision for the bigger picture or the further goal down the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gabriel, you've been very generous with your time. It's been a pleasure getting to chat with you. The new book, as we've been talking about, is Crux. It's available now at Barnes & Noble and online at bn.com. Highly recommend the folks listening at home check it out. For listeners who are interested in kind of keeping up with you, following you on your journeys this year, which I'm sure will be a big year for you with the new book and everything, how can listeners find you and connect with you?
Oh my God, I don't even know. I have like I don't I guess just my Instagram, GR Talent, but like I don't have like a lot of social media presence.
You have a website though, right?
I do have a website, yeah, and I will post my tour dates on the website.
There you go. So definitely check that out. That is just GabrielTallent.com, spelt like how you would imagine it would be spelt.
Talent.
Are there any authors or books that you're reading right now that you're excited about that you'd like to share?
Oh, I'm reading God of the Woods, which I am so far loving. I haven't I'm only sort of midway through, and like almost everything else is research. So I'm reading Exhibit, which I'm loving, and God of the Woods, which I'm loving, and then a bunch of research books, which I'm not gonna recommend because yeah, 'cause but those are
Research
the two
for
books that
your next book?
yeah, yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. Is there anything that you want to share about that, or is that still too early on to speak to?
Like, do you care? Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's about a wildland firefighter who returns to his hometown to investigate the suicide of his childhood best friend. And it's like
Oh wow.
a gumshoe noir.
Oh wow. That sounds like a total departure from Crux right now, but that sounds really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's a total departure. I wanted with Crux to give myself permission to like write a weird, rompy, artsy, fun book that would just sort of like rollick with like a
Uh,
small literary plot, highly interior, and then I wanted to try something like plottier and heavy hitting and sort of like thrillery. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
awesome. Well, we'll look forward to that, and hopefully, once you finish that and that's coming out, you'll stop by and talk to us again here on Port Over.
Oh, I'd be honored.
Awesome. All right, man. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.